from the notes that we took before, am I just doing those straight out and then putting into an agenda for right now? Or do I need to take anything out?
I don't think that we need to do anything with the previous notes and stuff.
Okay, so I'll post the agenda then. Okay. Give me a couple minutes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, so we'll start with the big question that everybody's going to have to ask, which is, are we going to reopen the lab? And the answer is going to be yes. We are going to be reopening the lab contingent upon the recommendations of the smart scientists who actually have studied this stuff in the past. Right now, it is relatively safe to reopen the lab, and things are going to be reopening, so people are going to be going out and doing stuff anyway. So the plan right now is to reopen the lab. We are going to be putting some limitations on that, however. First limitation is anybody in the lab is going to need to wear PPE, which includes face covering and gloves in certain areas. Chris is going to go over a little bit more on that when we get in a few minutes. We are also going to be putting limits on how many people can be in the space. Primarily, in any given area, there's going to be limits based on the number of people. For example, the laser room should have no more than 2 people in it. Because of this being a strict policy on needing PPE, we are going to have to come up with some way of dealing with consequences for people who decide to not follow that. We have a board meeting that, coming up, that we're going to be talking about that and figuring out the best way to implement consequences that are going to be coming up. So before we go much further, is there anybody who has specific questions or anything that we want to address right off the bat? Yes, Mike.
I would assume that homemade face coverings of the cloth style variety are acceptable and not just N95s that are impossible to get.
That would be correct.
Yep.
Chris, do you want to go over anything regarding PPE requirements and stuff?
Is Chris muted?
Chris?
Oh, yes, Chris was muted.
Okay. Will you go over PPE stuff, please?
Right. So a lot of PPE use is self-explanatory. If anybody ever has any questions, I am happy to do a short training session. Okay. The main thing to be aware of is that once you've got your PPE on, stay vigilant. That doesn't change anything. The main thing to be cautious of is the psychological tendency to just treat yourself as if you are completely safe, and drop that appropriate level of caution once it's on. Okay. There was an issue about masks and their function earlier. So yes, homemade is fine, and Blackheart was right that the main reason that they're being recommended is because they prevent you from spreading things to other people. But do not discount the effect coming the other way, because even though they're not 100% protective against getting infected yourself, for most viruses, there is a dose effect. Okay, and we do know that even reasonably tightly woven cotton can absorb like 65% of the incoming particles. That's a lower infectious dose that's going to result in most people in a less severe version of the disease for themselves. Right, so it's not just for other people, even though that is the noble sentiment. Also, if anybody has any explicit questions, feel free to ask.
I have a recommendation, though.
Yeah.
That we put I'm sure there are pre-prepared posters or graphics that we could print and put in various places, like how to wear a mask. Like, don't just cover your mouth. Don't wear it under your chin. Those are not protective. And then I've heard about like wearing a gloves, that if you mentally treat it like you're putting on gloves and then handling a bunch of raw chicken to cook, that's the best way to treat them. Because if you're wearing gloves and then scratching your face or brushing your hair or poking your eye, it doesn't really help.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And those are really good suggestions. And that's pretty much the way that I was trained to work in infectious environments. The assumption is once you've touched anything, everything is contaminated until you take specific steps to make it not so.
Yeah, and the I think the other thing that Dave didn't mention is also not having events and things to encourage like large groups of people, on top of just the limitations per area that are being decided.
Yes, we did mention the FabLab limit of 2 people. Things like the classroom, we can spread out a little bit more. So that would be 5 people with distance, not 5 people all at the same table. The laptop bar would be probably another 5 people. The warehouse, we're slightly less concerned about. Obviously, out there still practice the safe distancing, practice sanitary uses, but don't be all up in someone's grill, and there's tons of room out there.
Right. And for people engaged in projects, cleaning up after yourself, it was a nice thing before. That's really important now, to put your materials away and decontaminate the work surfaces in the area that you've been. And like before we shut down, the gloves are going to be available. The spray bottles and paper towels are going to be available. So please just clean up after yourselves, physically and biologically.
On that note, like with gloves being available, if you do want to donate gloves, fantastic. If you want to donate if you have extra funds and want to donate towards the public PPE that we're going to try to provide, that'd be great too. We are going to be continuing the PPE production at Familab. We are going to be making the schedule for that public so that people that do want to use the laser can kind of figure out the time around that. If someone wants to use Familab to start sewing masks as well, that could be something that could be set up as well, and it would be very beneficial. Does anybody have any questions, comments in regards to that? Yes, please put trash in the floor. Or not in the floor, in the garbage can. Just to go over a few chat notes that people have been making during this. Brian commented that masks are also a good reminder to stop touching your face hole. And also brings up that skin is pretty good at keeping things out of your body. However, it stays on your skin. So if you touch an infected surface and then touch your eyes, your face, put it in your mouth, that's bad. Patrick mentioned hand washing soap is a good mechanical cleaner. I cannot comment on the science of that, but I believe it. Yes, like once it gets bubbly and soapy, for 20 seconds is the recommended time. 30 seconds in a restaurant normally. It does get a lot of stuff off. Edward, classroom is a bit bigger than laptop bar, so maybe more in the classroom and less in the laptop. That does make sense. Thank you. Basically, limit the people and also maximize the distance. Right, the laptop and classroom, We haven't measured it to see how many people can fit in 6-foot circles. Please, please, please use your best judgment, better than your best judgment. Find your smartest friend and use their best judgment. Jamie,
Yeah.
taking PPE off. If you go to take a drink or eat something, fold it in on itself so you don't touch the outside of the mask, but try not to need to take it off. Another good point, because with masks and gloves, the outside is keeping the contaminant on it so that you don't get it in you. Gloves, you can look up how to take it off, to fold it in on itself, etc. And then Mike said, dirty PPE in the trash can, not anywhere else. Yes. How are you going to know if people aren't wearing PPE? We don't have the capability to man the lab with a manager 24/7. A lot of this is the community self-policing. We're going to have to depend on every member to basically keep the other members safe. And it's not just for your benefit, it's for their benefit, their family's benefit, your family's benefit. Shunning scarlet letters and that, great idea. We are working on getting the Famduinos set back up, so we have a not live but an intermittent picture of the lab for people who are thinking of heading out, so that you can check Famduino, see, okay, it seems like it's very crowded, I'll wait a bit, or I'll go tomorrow, or oh, it's absolutely vacant, I can head out there and get some work done in a bit. Our ops team, mostly I believe Kyle and Mike, are working on that, and that will hopefully be able to be up by this weekend, ? But they will know more information on that. It's not the security cameras. Those are very much so not on the network, not accessible from outside the lab, and they are only watched in an extreme emergency. We do not want to have live video feed of Familab for various privacy reasons. The long-standing, not really policy, but guideline has been an intermittent picture that just gives you a general blurry look of how many people are there. Just because there's all kinds of problems of like our Slack is not private, it is public. There's lots of privacy concerns with if in the case that you have a stalker or somebody that you don't want to know that you're at lab, we don't want to put you in that position of having to compromise your privacy.
We made the policies related to that for a reason. So the next item that I'll toss out there.
Actually, can I speak to that enforcement issue for a moment?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So we don't want to, but yes, of course, we'll yell and shame people if absolutely necessary to maintain safety. But I'd like to point out the people on this call, you're the core of the lab. You're the people that cared enough to show up for this. So as much as possible, we want to implement this just as a matter of establishing the culture. Right, we are the core members, right? So we sort of get to set the tone that, you know, especially newer members are going to cue off of, right? So hopefully we can do that thoroughly enough that we don't need to yell at people and can just come in and be responsible and respectful, and people see that, oh shit, that's how we should be behaving here. The end.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. And yes, I agree.
Real quick, if there is an egregious, completely, a very egregious offense and someone's being flagrantly disrespectful of the membership and of safety precautions, bring it to the board's attention, please, for us to handle.
Mm-hmm.
Don't we have a form for that?
We do. We can post it in the post-meeting announcement.
Yes, Mike, I do see you raising your hand, but I want to throw one thing out there real quick. So one of the things that was not mentioned earlier when we were talking is when the lab will be open. So the plan right now is for it to be opened tomorrow. So we will be somebody will go up and turn on all of the door readers and get it all sorted out so that the lab will be available tomorrow. Yes, Mike.
Well, that was one of my questions. Okay. The second one was, if you are alone in the lab, are we still asking you to wear face masks if you're the only one there?
Yes.
Yes.
You could still get stuff on equipment that you then don't clean and infect people. Yeah.
Right. Droplet onto surface and then touch surface to mucous membrane is absolutely a transmission route.
I just think we need to make sure that we're clear on when it's required, and if it's always, which is great. I think that we just need to make sure that we're clear on what and when, because some people are like, oh, there's no one else here, they can't get it. But
yes,
we all know it can live on surfaces for a while.
If you are in the lab, you should be covered. You should be using PPE. Period. I don't know how to make it any less vague.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'm keeping track of the chat, the chat and Slack and everything else on my screens. Michelle did bring up that we are going to be putting signs up around the lab, and that will be part of the reopening procedures.
And I think we mentioned no events, limited people, no non-members, I think is something. It's open to the membership.
The lab will be open to members and their families which are living in the same household. So no guests at this time. We've talked about other things like how we're going to deal with new members, how we're going to deal with people who are in the process, but those are all things that we're going to figure out at a separate time. That's not really part of this call, but there's a lot of other things that we're going to have to go into figuring out how to keep us going. And all of you who are here who are paying members, we really appreciate you. You're the ones who are keeping this place afloat, and we need to try and do what we can to keep everything going.
Yeah, and to touch on that, we do want to reopen lab because we love all of you, but we don't want to do it in a dumb way. Limiting it to just members is part of that, because we want you to be able to use the lab. That's not saying we want you all to jump on there and get out there tomorrow, all 120 people, but in a safe manner. We don't want to not allow you to use the facilities. Was that a triple negative?
And it's making sure that lab keeps afloat is not only good for the membership, but it's also good for giving back to the community in general, because the PPE initiative has been really good for helping hospitals, helping the medical community, being able to build if you need to use the lab to build things to keep your own house safe, to make masks or anything, that's important, stuff like that.
And also, I will point out that there are some members that make their living via Familab, and that is important to them as well. Mike, did you have a question?
No, I was gesturing at my screen.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Brian, you asked when will we reevaluate? The reevaluation will be continuous. So the board will be looking at the news. We will be looking at what's going on. It's not impossible that we might shut down again, and that might be a Familab decision. It might be a state decision. It might be a federal decision. I doubt it's going to be a federal decision, but we may shut down again. But it's all based off of whatever the current situation is. It's going to be reevaluated at every board meeting and every member meeting, and it's going to be discussed probably continuously among the board and the ops channel and stuff like that. So there will always be reevaluation happening.
And we do kind of have our own Dr. Fauci in Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
That is uncomfortably high praise.
I'm sorry, Jamie, we can't hear you.
Oh.
So the major takeaways from today are we are going to reopen the lab. The lab will be reopened tomorrow. I don't know what time, but it will be tomorrow. If you are in the lab, you are going to be required to wear PPE, face coverings, gloves in certain areas. If you do not have these things, let us know. We'll see what we can do. I don't know how much help we can be, but let us know. If you have PPE that you can donate, please do. We will love to take it and use it in the space. Things will be reevaluated as we go forward. If there's any specific questions, speak now or later or some other time or whatever. We'll do what we can to answer them whenever we can. But just right now, we're looking to do what we can to make sure that everybody's going to stay safe. We can reopen and get people back in the space, but as few people as possible.
I don't think we mentioned it. For certain areas like the laser and stuff where it's kind of one person in control of the station, having signing up for certain times to try to keep people spread out from each other is a thing. Yes.
Scheduling,
that's the word. Words are hard.
We did not really in our board meeting recently, we did not discuss having a schedule for the laser. We have never done that before. We are making public the PPE schedule so that people can work around that. And with all of this, it's all dependent on you, the membership, kind of owning it, keeping us safe, and self-policing a little bit, communicating. We have Laser Chan on Slack, and if needed, we can set up a calendar of some sort.
Okay, so things to consider if necessary.
Yes, I think it'll be part of the constant reevaluation of the situation.
Right.
What is the contingency plan for the murder hornets? We don't have one. Don't bring them into the lab.
And Mike did post his company is making 3D printed masks with their logo.
We're making actual just like fabric printed masks. I'm actually just about to drop it in lab ops and management. There's several companies like the same company that we order our t-shirts from for our swag and stuff are now selling printed. Basically, you can get anything printed on a mask. It's a dye sub printing process on different on some kind of fabric, and we've got our company logo and one of our special speaker grills that is kind of indicative of our product. Here's a picture of the speaker. Well, it's almost a speaker, but here's a picture of the product and kind of that. I don't know if something we wanted to look into, but we've done like t-shirts and other things in the past. At quantity 100, it's $13 a piece. If we wanted to get a buy-in from membership, I'd probably buy a couple myself, and we could do any kind of pattern logo we wanted. Just put our Familab logo in the corner or whatever.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And so I think that kind of ends it for like what I have to really say as far as any official news or statements from the lab. So if you guys have any other questions, ask now, or we can continue this offline or actually technically be online still.
Oh, it was totally online.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, comments,
Record.
concerns, Patrick asks, is the lab going to be back to 24-hour access? Yes, it is. That's how Familab is. We have no easy way to limit the hours, and also, what is Familab without 4 a.m.?
Also kind of helps spread people out if people are deciding to be the one person at 3 a.m.
Yeah, but if everybody decides to be 3 a.m., then that's a problem.
Yes, please, once a Famduino is up, check it before you decide to go out. Pop in Slack if you have any concerns, or if you want to post in LaserChan or Metalworking or etc., and say, hey, I'm planning to be up there for this time. Does anybody have any problems? Is anybody going to be there? And also, if you do get there and someone also gets there and they're like, oh shit, just communicate, be friendly, be Canadian. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Can Craig teach us how to be Canadian?
Probably.
I can try. I need some poutine and maple syrup stat. Also, a lot of beer.
And I'm sorry.
Jamie, are you typing? Okay. You had that look like you had a question. So you could also just leave poutine and everyone can stay 6 feet away and walk by it. So if there are no further questions, I think that we can adjourn the meeting. Lab ops and management, if you want to get in more direct contact with ops or board, we all stay in there. That's kind of the go-to channel for it. We do also watch all the rest of the channels for the most part.
Not everyone.
Yes. We will post in announcements the anonymous form for concerns. And also, if you ever do have a concern and you don't want to go to that form, board@familab.org is an email that goes to all of us at the board, or reach out to us privately. So I think that about covers it. Other board folk?
Any further questions before we call it adjourned?
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Okay, then we will adjourn this meeting and we will commence to dicking around time. Feel free to continue hanging out, chatting.